Good morning, traders. It's Tuesday, May 18th. Taking a look at the charts, we'll start off with the precious metals sector. Obviously, a big move yesterday, starting to really pick up speed to the upside. And we're looking at GDX here, which is the large cap gold miners. You can see a big pop there yesterday. We're getting this kind of big pop and hook to the upside. And what I want to kind of focus in on here is I just want to be aware it is starting to, it's in a short-term uptrend. We've broken some previous highs. We've broken a level here. We've broken this high. We kind of had a bunch of little highs here. And now we've broken this real significant standout highs. These standout highs that are really important in terms of changing trends. So where we are right now is everyone's kind of piling into the play. It's getting it feels like it's a crowded play. It feels like we're in a new uptrend. But overall, if you just take a look at the volume here, we had huge volume move yesterday there. And the last time, whenever we see those big volume moves, it's usually these great big pops, these huge moves to the upside. You can see another huge volume move here. You get these massive green bars, moves to the upside. And this is the same with GDXJ, SIL, SILJ, all the gold miners that it becomes a short-term crowded play. And everyone kind of chases it and drives it up. And then we can see some selling usually come after that. Now, here we are in a downtrend, so the odds are it's going to pull back fairly steep. But you can see we've kind of broken through this falling trend line. We've rallied up, we kind of pulled back, tested that level, and now we're surging up. So I'm not saying price is going to collapse by any means, but I do feel as though we're going to see it potentially, it's going to gap higher today. This is a huge move. What is set to happen today from my gut feeling and experiences is going to open higher, and then it's going to sell down and put in some type of top. And that's what it's set to do. It's set to open higher. And if you look what happened over here, right after these big up bars, you have a big green day. The next day it opens higher because everyone chases it, piles in. The media, the mass market, the emotional play of people just jumping on board. And then it sells off and goes down. Same thing happened over here. The next day, everyone puts their orders in, they get filled at the high, and then of course it sells off and moves lower. So while I think the gold miners are starting a new uptrend, they're showing lots of signs of strength, working themselves up the band list. They're becoming leaders, which we talked about quite a while ago, that we could see the precious metals become leaders and the stock market start to flounder and struggle a lot. All that's coming into play here. But I do feel like it's a little bit overdone. We might see this market pull back, consolidate. The question is, how tight of a range does it pull back into? Just a tight range, or does it actually flush down a little bit deeper, a more complex correction before it starts to go higher again? So we'll just have to see how that goes. And this is the same across the board for silver miners and things. Let's go take a look over at gold. You can see gold picking up speed. It hasn't broken these highs yet, still way off those, but overall it's in an uptrend, it's picking up speed. You can see there's quite a bit of volume piling in, a surge of volume, so it's definitely picking up some exposure, and I think we're eventually going to see it stall and pull back as well. If we look over at silver, up 1.5% this morning, it's picking up speed. It's coming right into these highs over here. You can see right across here. We are coming into a resistance zone. It's had a nice run. We'll see how it plays out. Typically, when you get huge moves to the upside, especially into resistance with big volume, you can see on this other chart, a lot of times when you get into these big volume areas at a time when big sellers step in, we're going to see it struggle a little bit. And there's some volume just starting to pick up. Yesterday, we saw silver volume start to pick up a bit. I wouldn't be surprised if it's higher today. As kind of more people hear about it in the news, they pile in, chase prices, and they enter right at resistance. And we'll just let this market continue to work itself out. Obviously, silver's in this big sideways range, just oscillating. And if it can start to break out, as you know, I think it could be primed and ready for a very big run to the upside if it can actually break out of this, multi-month pattern here. Just take a quick look over at SILJ just so you can get a feel for things. Similar type of play, big green up bar, big volume. We've seen price of silver miners get up into this range several times. We all know what's happened every time it's more or less got to this level or beyond. It's put in some pretty big pullbacks, 25% corrections. This one opened up high and pulled back 25 again over here. 22. So we're definitely at a resistance zone. This market is, the precious metal sector is threatening to break out, trying to break out. There's a lot of excitement in this sector, and usually when there's a lot of excitement, especially at resistance, usually we see sellers step back in. So while I'm excited about this, I don't think we're in the clear just yet, but this is a big pattern. There's a lot of upside potential for precious metal miners going forward, and yeah, I think there's going to be a great play there for investors invested in the precious metals sector, both physical bullion and miners to the upside, and we'll just let that continue to mature. All right, let's take a look over at the stock market real quick. Look at the SP 500, get a feel for things. SP 500 it has held up above the 50-day. It's come down, it's tested. We'll see what kind of traction it gets. You can see the short-term momentum here. It's gone down to the 50-day, start to bounce up, start to go neutral here in terms of trends. Yesterday it turned red, indicating that it is in a short-term downtrend based on the strength of the momentum to the downside. It broke two previous lows. It had such a strong enough pullback down that it's kind of kicked it over to a short-term downtrend. We'll see what type of price action takes place today. If you look down in the slower chart here over the last 2 hours, we're just seeing a little bit of volume pickup, mostly to the sell side. We'll see if this goes to a deeper correction here. I talked about this yesterday, how we can get an A, B, C correction when we break this little low here. That's when it turns into an ABC correction. That's when we're going to see panic selling again, and then from there it could take off and continue to go higher. But we'll see how this plays out. It may just oscillate, trade sideways in this range, and then eventually kick right back into an uptrend and start another leg higher. We just need to see how that is going to play out. Let's go to the crude oil real quick here. Crude oil up 0.5% this morning. It's threatening to break here and pop. If it breaks this pattern, I think there's a lot of upside potential. Let's just take a look at this pattern here. Let's squish her down. Go down from these lows up to this high, down to these lows. There's a lot of upside potential here in crude still. Just looking at this pattern, you can see crude, if it breaks this and starts to run, it's going to run 15%, and then it could run 30% to the upside. Brings us up to 88 based on this pattern. If we were to go back in time over here and just look at this pattern, when we first saw this, depending on where you grab the bottom from this big flush out low, you could grab the spike low, you could just grab this, not so much the big flush out future spike. You could grab this kind of first standout low, go to this high, down to this low here. Gives you an idea of where those targets are for crude oil to hit. Let's just squish this in. And as you can see, if I draw on here, it rallied up, came down, consolidated. That's the halfway, this is the flag, the halfway point. And then of course it continued all the way up. It came to the 618, traded sideways for a little bit, and then extended through it and hit that 100% measured move, which we had $64 target on it way back over here. Right when it started to break out, we talked about how 64 target on crude was the next level, and that's where it's hit. So now we've got this next bull flag pattern, and it's pointing to a 30% move, $88 per barrel potentially to the upside. Pretty big move. I think a lot of people aren't expecting it. We are seeing the energy sector stocks come right back to life here. They're starting to threaten to break out. If we look on the board here, we got some new triggers on the market. XOP has kicked back into a new trigger. It's just zoom in a little bit here. XOP's got some pretty big volatility, but overall it's pushed and stretched up here, trying to build a little bit of a bull flag and starting to break out. So it's definitely starting to get some traction back. If we look at XLE, which is the energy sector as a whole, similar type of pattern. It poked to new highs, pulled back, and it's threatening to break out there again. Obviously looking at XLE, there's upside potential on this one around 11%. What else here? We got the banking sector, the regional banks. They are showing some signs they're in a consolidation. They haven't broken out yet, but they're primed and ready also to potentially pop and continue a run. And the last but not least, SILJ, which 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's not quite in the top 10 yet. Obviously, I just talked about this, how it's got this huge move, big volume into resistance. It could break and start to have a huge run. Overall, I do feel like it's going to gap higher, potentially sell down, and still take some more time. Look at this really gnarly range of how it's rallied, sold off, rallied, sold off. It's all over the place. Obviously, silver moves fast. Silver miners move even faster, and this is a wild ride. Once it breaks out, though, I think it'll be off to the races to go a lot higher. Keep in mind, let's just go back to the SP 500. If just keep in mind here when we look at the bottom of this chart here, our overall market trend, the trend is not favorable for stocks. Now, obviously, precious metals are becoming a favored sector. We're seeing money definitely flow into those. They're leading the way. But other than that, a lot of other sectors, half of the sectors are in a short-term downtrend. About a third of them, more than a third, are in risk-off mode, so they're not outperforming the defensive plays like gold, utilities, things like that, bonds. So this market is definitely a struggle. These new triggers here, technically, we don't really want to be in stocks yet. We're still neutral. So as exciting as these may be, remember everything right now is kind of overbought at resistance, and the stock market is not favorable. Big selling could step in here at any point. We see the stock market, the NASDAQ, SP 500 get crushed, and of course, all these will eventually just drop and sell off, and we could see a lot more red across this board. So just because we have a trigger doesn't mean it's a buy signal. The market's not favorable to be in stocks at the moment. Obviously, we just need to wait for the stock market to give us a new buy signal, and then obviously we can look for the new hot sectors, leading sectors, and try and ride those up for much bigger gains. Anyways, that's it for this morning. I'll talk to you in a little bit. Bye-bye.